Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, moving migrants to San Diego. More flights are expected this week from Texas. We'll tell you how these cases are being handled. And a new direction for Horton Plaza as the City Council considers a plan to repurpose the property.
So this is Victoria, and you can't tell from the outside that she's pregnant unless you're lucky enough to see the baby kick.
Reproducing rhinos. KPBS gets an update from zookeepers as they try to save a species.
I mean, the ultimate goal is really to just allow mothers and families to do what they have to do, which is feed their babies.
A local mother and photographer tells us how she's trying to normalize breastfeeding. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Monday, May 20th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. A 16-year-old boy died this morning in Texas while in Border Patrol custody. The agency says the boy from Guatemala was detained last week and was due to be placed in a shelter for unaccompanied minors. This is the fifth underage migrant to die in custody since December. The Trump administration says a rise in illegal border crossings has overwhelmed facilities, especially in Texas. There's no word on the cause of his death. Dozens of immigrants started arriving by plane in San Diego last week. And KPBS reporter Andrew Bowen says they're coming from Texas.
Customs and Border Protection sent a flight of between 120 and 135 migrants to San Diego on Friday. They were all families taken into custody in the Rio Grande Valley sector, which includes Brownsville and McAllen, Texas. Last month, that sector of the border saw more than 6 times the number of apprehensions than San Diego. Mayor Kevin Faulconer says San Diego needs more resources from the federal government to help deal with the new arrivals.
It's incredibly important that the federal government jump in and to provide help and support. And that is a message that I will continue to be advocating in Washington, D.C. This week and next week because we need financial help and financial assistance.
It's not clear when or how the migrants will be released here. Since last fall, a group of local nonprofits has run a temporary shelter for migrant families released from federal custody. It's partly funded by county and state dollars. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Local police departments are releasing details on internal police investigations. It's now required by state law. KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tragesser tells us about a use of force case in La Mesa.
The newly released records detail a 2017 standoff when officers shot and killed an armed 19-year-old man who shot his gun into the air. The incident started with an attempt to pull over a car with Isaias Raziel Ochoa Batista and 2 other people. The car did not stop and instead sped away. When the car reached a dead end, all 3 people inside ran away. Ochoa Batista hid behind a cement wall at the top of a drainage ditch. He then shot his gun into the air, and so officers shot him. The officers were not charged, and an internal La Mesa Police Department review found the shooting was justified. Both officers feared for their lives and feared for the safety of other officers on the scene, the report said. They both fired their weapons to protect themselves and other officers. Claire Tragesser, KPBS News.
The transformation of Horton Plaza awaits city approval. The City Council is expected to vote this evening on the proposal. The mall would be turned into a high-tech office hub called the Campus at Horton. The developer plans to cut the amount of retail space in half. New businesses are getting some financial help from the city of San Diego. KPBS reporter Milana Spitzer tells us how these companies will reach underserved communities.
I'm here at the Jacobs Center for Neighborhood Innovation at the grand opening of the Connect All Accelerator. The program is for local startups led by minority founders and lower-income entrepreneurs. Mayor Kevin Faulconer says he hopes this will bring development and jobs to this historically underserved community.
We know how to compete. We know how to start these businesses, and it's about time that we take this opportunity to communities that traditionally did not have access to these type of services.
Communities like Southeast San Diego, where City Council member Monica Montgomery hopes the accelerator will create jobs and economic opportunity.
It truly will dig down into the root of our community. Economic opportunity is so important. If you look at the numbers, often District 4 zip codes carry twice the unemployment rate of the entire region, and this will help in areas like that.
The 2019 cohort at the Connect All Accelerator is made up entirely of minority and low-income entrepreneurs like Kelvin Crosby. Crosby is blind and says he created the smart guider cane using autonomous technology found in self-driving cars to give independence to others like him.
Losing my vision has been a journey, and as I continue to lose more, the more independence I lose. And I want to gain that independence back. Well, how do I do that?
The Smart Guider is Crosby's answer. It combines the latest technology in LiDAR sensors, ultrasonic sensors, GPS tracking, and more. Crosby's company is one of 13 selected for the accelerator, which provides access to mentorship, workspace, and investment opportunities. Entrepreneurs get these services at no cost, thanks to funding from the city.
The city has already provided $1 million and will contribute $1.5 million more over the next 3 years. In Lincoln Park, I'm Melina Spitzer for KPBS.
A chance of rain will continue tomorrow, and windy weather is expected to stick around throughout the week. Erin Calandra has details in tonight's forecast.
We are seeing some pretty gusty conditions in those interior areas, mostly the mountains and the deserts. Wind gusts up to 45 miles per hour. That's going to create some blowing dust. So if you're traveling, you might have some visibility issues. Certainly both hands on the steering wheel as you're heading down through those canyons and passes. Now, as far as the coast, it's going to be breezy. We could see some winds up to about 20 miles per hour. So not as strong, but that's still pretty intense for people who live right along the coast. Taking a look at the satellite and radar, wow, it's a mess. We are seeing showers and storms around, and that's going to continue tonight and into tomorrow. Here's the big picture. We have storms that are driving in off the Pacific into northern California. That's what's causing all of this wet weather. Tonight, partly cloudy at 58 degrees with spotty showers expected in some locations. Ramona 51, El Cajon at 56 degrees. Now take a look at tomorrow. It's still going to be pretty chilly. Temperatures slightly below average. Here's the futurecast. This is tonight. Mostly the interior areas will be dealing with some of those pop-up showers. Could see some light to moderate rain in some locations. Tomorrow when the kiddos are at the school bus stop, don't forget the umbrella. Temperatures will be reaching 65 in Oceanside. That's where we'll see the most sunshine. Everywhere else, expect to see cloudy conditions with showers popping up, temperatures in the upper 50s to low 60s. It's going to remain like this throughout the week. We have a big trough in the jet stream, leaving us wide open for those chillier conditions. Expect to see sunshine throughout the week with a morning shower Thursday along the coast. Inland, those showers around through Wednesday, even into Thursday, but drier for the weekend in the 70s. That's the case for the deserts. We eventually warm up to the 80s this weekend, and in the mountains, we're in the 40s, jumping up to those mid-50s by Saturday. For KPBS News, I'm Erin Calandra. Back to you.
A bill making its way through the State House would budget money to help shelters better serve homeless pet owners. KPBS reporter Lynn Walsh explains how much money could be made available.
Senate Bill 258 would make $5 million in grants available to help cover the cost of providing shelter, food, and basic veterinary care for pets whose owners are homeless. State Senator Bob Hertzberg, who introduced the bill, says 5 to 10% of the 3.5 million homeless Americans own pets. In San Diego, the Alpha Project estimates 10% of the people in their shelter own a pet. Chief Operating Officer Amy Gagno says they allow pets because not doing so can be a deterrent for people to access services.
Our philosophy, as long as your pet is behaving, you're taking care of it, it's not disrupting, then we have a lot of tolerance for that. Now, as soon as that does happen, we have to do something about that.
Gagno says they do not set aside funds specifically to care for these animals and rely heavily on donations and partnerships with other organizations. The San Diego County Humane Society also provides services to homeless pet owners. Through its PAWS program, they are on track to serve 1.7 million meals to pets in need. For more information on the resources available in San Diego to help cover the costs of caring for a pet, Head to our website, kpbs.org. Lynn Walsh, KPBS News.
San Diego Zoo researchers are caring for 2 pregnant southern white rhinos. They're key in the plan to save the critically endangered northern white rhinos. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson shows us what this entails.
Ready? Marco Zeno has worked with the 6 rhinos since they arrived in 2015.
Nice job.
Their 22-hour flight from South Africa was the first leg of a long journey that is far from over.
It is pretty amazing. These animals used to be, out essentially in the wild, and to come from a place where they had almost no human interaction to here and work so closely with us every day. Yeah, it's very surprising.
Zeno says the animals are friendly and approachable, although he says they work under strict guidelines. All contact is through a protective barrier.
So I'll ask her now that she's offered it up, but let's see. Helene, you want to show that again?
Even so, there's no hesitation to put an arm through the fence to encourage a behavior.
Good girl. Oh, those are nice teeth.
Showing teeth is valuable, but the rhinos are here for a different reason. Reproductive physiologist Barbara Durant says she hopes to eventually implant northern white embryos in these 6 rhinos. The first step is to impregnate each of them by artificial insemination.
That will tell us that those females now are proven females. They're capable of conceiving, they're capable of carrying a term pregnancy and giving birth. Then we can start to use those animals after they've weaned their babies. We'll start to use those animals for practicing embryo transfer.
Durant's team was successful twice. The first insemination happened a year ago.
If she'll turn a little bit, you can see her feet.
Here, Durant showed KPBS a live ultrasound picture of a 53-day-old fetus inside Victoria.
Oh, and now it looks like she's got her back towards us. She's moving in there.
The fetus was about the size of a AA battery back then.
We watched it grow. We were doing measurements. We could see as the limb buds were forming. We saw the heart forming. Now it's so big that it is not up close where we can see it. It has fallen down into her abdomen, so it's way down in here now.
Durant says the baby is so big now that it's too hard to get a full picture on an ultrasound machine. These recent ultrasounds show a baby that's growing and developing normally. Durant guesses the rhino is the size of a laundry basket now, although it's admittedly hard to tell.
So this is Victoria, and you can't tell from the outside that she's pregnant unless you're lucky enough to see the baby kick, which we often can see from the outside. If we're really lucky, we might see it right now, but you really can't tell. She hasn't gained that much girth.
The next crucial point comes in a month or 2. Durant says Victoria will probably become restless and move away from the other rhinos when she's ready to deliver.
It's normally not terribly long. In humans, you often hear about women being in labor for hours, 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours. That does not happen with these animals. And you can understand why in the wild that would not be a good thing, to have a prolonged labor in the wild, because the animal would be debilitated and would be subject to predation.
Victoria and another rhino, Amani, were both artificially inseminated. Amani is due in about 5 months, and Durant hopes 3 more rhinos will be pregnant soon. The next stage involves implanting an embryo that's conceived in the lab, but there's an obstacle. That embryo has to be delivered through a tight channel that curves back and forth for several feet.
So in my lab, we're developing robotic tools.
The solution might come from a UC San Diego robotics lab.
This is basically like trying to hold on one end of a flexible spaghetti noodle, and get the other end to move in a specific way. It's extremely difficult, nearly impossible. But with robotics, we can actually solve that problem.
Tomorrow, we'll explain how San Diego researcher Michael Yip is working on a tool that could save the rare rhinos from extinction. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Normalized breastfeeding started as a hashtag and has turned into a movement, chipping away at the stigma associated with breastfeeding in public. I'm joined now by the founder, Vanessa Simmons, who is also a San Diego-based photographer. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So with normalized breastfeeding, is the overall objective to get more people to feel comfortable breastfeeding? What's your ultimate goal?
I mean, the ultimate goal is really to just allow mothers and families to do what they have to do, which is feed their babies. So we know that babies they also get hungry when they're not at home, right? So they need to have that opportunity to be able to feed their baby the way that they've chosen to do so. We don't see anyone up in arms about a woman pulling out a bottle and mixing her formula and formula feeding her baby. That's just fine. I've had to formula feed my own kids due to the postpartum and the medication that was prescribed. At the same time, women who choose to breastfeed, this is the biological norm. So covers were never even really required or even seen as a need until the female body was sexualized, over-sexualized and hypersexualized. And so I feel like long term, if we can kind of go back to the way that breastfeeding is seen really in almost every other country in the world, I think the mothers here in the United States and the families would feel a lot more supported.
As far as why is it necessary not to use the cover? Why is it, if it makes people more comfortable, what's the problem with simply using a sheet?
From a mother's point of view, that's the issue, is making other people feel comfortable rather than themselves and their baby. And like I said before, a cover's never ever been needed until we saw the female body start to be hypersexualized. And so now, you know, there are people out there who will have a problem with a woman breastfeeding without a cover. But number one, she's protected by law, not only federally on federal property, but she's now protected in every single state. There are state laws across the United States that protect women to breastfeed in public without a cover or with a cover, however they choose to.
And how do you think your photography has helped with this message? Of course, it's a powerful medium.
It's a very powerful medium, and there's tons of other photographers out there doing the same thing and doing a great job at it. I think I really chose to focus on what was just the natural, normal thing that happened for the mother when I was in front of them and capturing that. And I have photographed some women who've been using a cover as well. It just really depends on that mom's situation, but I focused on documenting the norm.
And so do you feel that there have been strides made? What is your experience as far as the level of acceptance from society? Do you think that we're moving in the right direction?
I definitely think we're moving in the right direction. I think at the local levels and also at the state levels, and you see a lot of organizations that promote and support breastfeeding. But when you get online and you get on social media, there's still a huge population that just won't accept it. And I don't want to try and convince other people to accept what's the norm. I feel like this is the biological way that we have been given to feed our babies. So why not support moms in their choice, whether it's choosing to feed from a bottle or choosing to feed from the breast? Either way, if you don't like it, you really don't have to look at it. You can just turn your head. And there's nothing sexual about it. It's completely normal. It's completely natural. It's definitely difficult, but it's something that we should be supporting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, one-on-one with former Director of National Intelligence and frequent critic of the president, James Clapper. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The senior population will more than double over the next 25 years, affecting housing, healthcare, and social services. Currently, 1 in 5 seniors lives in poverty.
A lot of seniors suffer in silence because they're ashamed, they're embarrassed.
Hi, I'm Amita Sharma. Tune in to our California Dream Town Hall Special. Grain, California airs Wednesday at noon on KPBS Radio, KPBS TV, and streaming live on kpbs.org.
Congress is working on a plan to raise the national smoking age. A bill from Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell would make 21 the legal age to buy tobacco. The plan has support from Democrats. Many states, including California, have already raised the tobacco age. If passed, the new law would also apply to e-cigarettes and vaping products. 1 in 5 high school students say they vaped, according to a recent government study. May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Tonight, PBS tells the story of Norman Mineta, who broke political barriers in California and Washington. Here's a preview.
In a sense, Mineta's timing was good. America was in turmoil. Growing protest against the Vietnam War shared the stage with the Summer of Love. By 1967, there were 3 Latino congressmen and a senator. Hawaii's representatives were all Asian American. But outside of Hawaii, there were no Asian Americans, no mayors, ambassadors, federal judges, cabinet members, or congressmen.
Norm got into politics, and that's when our lives just changed something awful. And then he started moving up, and then he ran for mayor, and he got it. And oh my gosh, it was international news. People from Japan, the newspapers came over to interview him, and pictures were taken, and we were in the newspapers all over, and it was amazing.
The night of the election, next morning I wake up and there on the garage door is spray painted JP. You don't make a big thing out of it, but you store it away.
I'm confident that we will be able to face the kind of danger that we do have in the urban crisis, but take advantage of the opportunities that are available to all of us and make San Jose a great city.
San Jose was a city pivoting from the past to the future. It would soon become the epicenter of a world called Silicon Valley. The new mayor of San Jose would have his hands full.
You can watch Norman Mineta and his legacy, An American Story, tonight at 9 here on KPBS. Last night was the finale for Game of Thrones. A UC San Diego graduate won a contest to create the show's language. It ended up leading to a career in Hollywood. He tells his story to Marketplace.
Here's how you say this is Marketplace in Dothraki. Gini Jereser. My name is David Peterson, and I created the Dothraki and High Valyrian languages for HBO's Game of Thrones. When I was creating both Dothraki and High Valyrian, there were little bits of language that George R.R. Martin had included in his books. My job was to take everything that George R.R. Martin had created and use that as my starting point, building off of it after that to make sure that everything that I created fit with his original vision. I get paid differently depending on whether I'm working on a film or a television show. For a television show, it's much more structured. So I get paid a flat fee to create the language. Then after that, I'm paid an episodic fee to do translation on the episode, do voice recordings, work with the actors if need be, and also for language maintenance, that is, to add vocabulary to the language as I go. Most of the time, the actors on all the various shows and films I work on get the pronunciation and the delivery of their lines pretty good. Sometimes it's excellent, which is great. And then every so often it's absolutely abysmal and I just roll my eyes. But it's like, that's showbiz. You just kind of have to roll with it. Easily my favorite scene from the show revolved around one of my lines. Daenerys had been negotiating with a slave master to get his army of Unsullied. He had seen her and assumed that she only spoke the common tongue, and so he used a translator to talk to her.
My master would like you to know that the silver is paid to the baby's owner, not the mother.
After she gets his army in exchange for a dragon, she turns the tables on him and reveals to him with one line that she actually speaks his language. She says, "Zaldrizes busdarixos daor." And then, of course, mayhem ensues. It's easily my favorite scene in the entire series. I mean, that basically launched my career. Producers saw Game of Thrones and they said, yes, that's what we want to be doing. We want to be doing something like that. And pretty much like every job I've gotten since then has been a direct result of working on Game of Thrones.
You can watch more stories like that one at marketplace.org. Now here's a recap of tonight's top stories. More migrants being held in Texas are expected to arrive in San Diego this week. It's not clear when or how the migrants will be released in San Diego. Mayor Kevin Faulconer says the city needs more resources from the federal government to help deal with the new arrivals. The transformation of Horton Plaza awaits city approval. The city council is expected to vote on this evening on this proposal. The mall would be turned into a high-tech office hub called the Campus at Horton. The developer plans to cut the amount of retail space in half. 13 local startups are the first to take part in a new business incubator called Connect All, open today inside the Jacobs Center in Chollas View. The city of San Diego is investing more than $2 million into this co-working space. Companies are provided equipment, mentoring, and support services. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.